there. Without a video. Hold on a minute, Robert. I'm looking for where is my damn page?
No, you need to, all right, yeah, okay.
Hold on 1 minute, Robert. Hold on. Yes. Hello?
We should be at a quorum now, Peter.
Okay. Wait another 3 or 4 minutes and then we'll start at 20 of. The only opportunity you have to speak is during public session. Otherwise, only community board members can speak during the meeting. And if you do speak at community session, you'll have 3 minutes. At the end of the meeting. It's not a very long agenda, so that should be less than an hour. Just mention in the chat that you want to speak and we'll take note of it and okay, 2 more minutes and we'll start.
Peter, I'm having trouble getting the agenda. It's
I
Suzanne.
found it in Mike's message, hang on. And I'll tell you where I'm finding it. Mike's yesterday, his end of day
Hey,
email.
I'll hang on. I have a link. I'll put it in the chat for everybody. I have a linkable PDF, okay? To specifically just the agenda. So just 1 second on that.
But then how do I pull it up on my phone so I can read it as I'm,
You know what, Suzanne? Because I know you, I'm going to text you the link of it as well, okay?
Okay.
That's the kind of inside track info you can
okay, thanks.
take. 1 second.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Fleming. I'm the chair of Brooklyn Community Board 6. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for, putting up, I guess is the best phrase to use, with the manner in which we've been meeting for the last couple of years. Our understanding from the governor is that we can continue to meet electronically as long as New York City is in a state of emergency, which they are at present. We'll try and give everyone notice. I mean, there won't be any community board meetings during July and August, but there will be some committee meetings. So we'll try and give you as much notice when that ends. But we're hoping to be back together again in September, but who knows at this point. So, and we will need a motion from the floor with regard to that. But first I see a couple of elected officials. So I'm going to give them an opportunity to speak so that they can move on with their evening. The first one I see is State Senator Zellner Myrie. So I ask you, Senator, to please unmute yourself and go ahead and tell us what you've got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening to CV6 and everyone. I'll try to be as brief as possible. As you know, session just ended in the Assembly. It was on Saturday. In the Senate, it was on Friday. So many of us are making our way back to the districts and getting back into the groove of things. Just wanted to provide a very quick update on some of the priorities that we got past this session. There were a number of things that we didn't get to do, which I'm happy to talk about if people have questions about, but we were able to successfully get across the finish line the strongest voting rights protection bill in the country, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act of New York. I was proud to sponsor that. Both houses have passed the bill now, and so we will be having discussions with the governor's office about signing that into law. We were also able to act on COVID fraud. Some of you may recall we held a press conference in Park Slope with the Attorney General to talk about bad actors who were taking advantage of this pandemic and charging people more than they should be charged, telling them inaccurate testing times, and all sorts of other fraud associated with this pandemic. We passed this bill that would increase the penalties and empower the AG to go after them. And we also have done work relevant to Pride Month. At the closing days of session, we passed the Gender Inclusive Access to the Ballot Act, which would allow for any individual to run for particular party positions, as some of you may know, in our laws that had been designated as male and female. And so we have passed a bill that would get rid of that requirement. I can't end without speaking about the scourge of gun violence that we have been experiencing here in the city and, of course, across the nation. And I was proud to stand with my colleagues in the state legislature passing a host of bills at the close of session that included raising the age to purchase an assault weapon, that would regulate the way that we sell body armor, that would increase the transparency for gun dealers, along with a host of other very important pieces of legislation. And I will note, lastly, that last year we passed a bill to hold the gun industry accountable for bad actors that were feeding the violence epidemic that we are experiencing. The gun industry sued us on that bill, said it was unconstitutional, and just 2 weeks ago, a federal court threw out every single claim that the gun industry had, upheld our law as constitutional. So that's another tool in the toolbox we have to go after the gun industry. But thank you all for your service, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Or I'm sorry, Chair, however you want to proceed.
One question, if somebody has one. I see Joanna has her hand up.
Hi, Zellner. I'm in your district now, excited about that. And I wanted to get your take on why there was so little focus on the climate this session. We passed a couple important but smallish bills, and some of the things that would have had the most major impact were just left hanging. I just wanted to see what you thought about that.
Yeah, no, I share in the disappointment in us not being able to get really important and major pieces of legislation across the finish line. You know, it's hard sometimes to explain why one house moves a certain way and the other house doesn't, or why we don't move together. I think in Albany, there can be many, many reasons for these things to happen. But I frankly, we didn't get it done. And I am disappointed. And my hope is that we will redouble our efforts because we do not have the time. I will mention very briefly, one of the things that we were able to do We, working with the Adirondacks Park and working with our CUNY and SUNY institutions, we came up with an idea of a summer climate institute that would incorporate bringing kids from my district and districts that look like ours to the Adirondacks for a couple of weeks in the summer to work with professionals and academics if they're interested in careers in mitigating the climate crisis that we are in. That was put into the budget. That is a program that is going to start this year, and that is hopefully going to help in training our future leaders on fighting climate change. But I again share the disappointment, and my hope is that we will get it done at the very next opportunity.
Great, thank you very much. I also see we've been joined by Assemblyman Bobby Carroll. Bobby, if you want to unmute yourself, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Sure. Good evening. Thank you so much, Peter, for having me. It's wonderful to be back. Let me first just echo so much of what Senator Myrie said before. There were a lot of great things that we were able to get passed at the end of the year, especially around gun control, around a woman's right to choose, to protect that most sacred right that is being assaulted by the Supreme Court right now, as well a whole host of other important pieces of legislation. I'd love to highlight a couple of bills of mine that were passed. One was bringing 10-day voter registration to New York State, making sure that folks can register within 10 days of a primary, special, or general election. Another, which is an environmental bill, which Joanna, I agree with you, we could have done much more. My bill that didn't pass was the Build Public Renewables Act, which I would say is the most important piece of climate legislation in the nation, bar none. And it should have been passed. It was passed by the Senate, but it fell short on the last day in the Assembly. But we did pass a bill for renters that was drafted by my office, which would allow a right to know bill, would let renters know if their apartment that they were leasing was in a flood zone or had experienced floods, and how to get flood insurance, which I think is really important after last year's superstorm rainfalls that killed a number of individuals in basement apartments in Queens. We were also able to pass a real first in New York State when it comes to literacy curriculum, creating a dyslexia task force to be headed by the head of the state education department, Commissioner Betty Rosa, which I drafted, which we had spent a long, long time doing and worked with both state and city officials to get done. But as always, there is a lot more to do. And the way that gets done, and I think Senator Myrie would agree with me, is all of you. The advocacy that we get from our districts is essential to actually moving difficult legislation. It is easy when everybody agrees on something to move heaven and earth in a couple of days. But when there are new ideas out there, and the Build Public Renewables Act and the All Electric Buildings Act, the two big pieces of climate legislation that failed in Albany, these are new ideas, and new ideas are always hard, even by well-meaning people. And so we desperately need all of you who care about these issues to make sure that you know that your assembly member and your senator and myself and Zelnor are many of your state elected officials, but we're not everyone's, and to make sure that you let them know where you stand on these pieces of legislation and make sure that they raise up their voices, because the climate catastrophe that is impacting our planet is real. And if we don't act now, it's going to get much, much worse. I'm sure many of you read in the New York Times today that the Great Salt Lake in Utah is drying up. It's lost, I think, almost 60% of its mass in the last 30 years. And by 2040, if they don't take real measures to protect that lake, it could disappear like the Aral Sea disappeared in Kazakhstan in the early 2000s. And this is all man-made. This is because of diverting rain, diverting rivers for agriculture, for ski resorts, and the suburban sprawl that has taken over the canyon by Salt Lake. And it's absolutely devastating. And we can of course stop it. The power is in our hands. So on that very positive note, if there's somebody who wants to ask a question, I will do my best to answer it.
Just anybody, one person have a question? Not seeing any. Bobby, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Going back to our regular agenda. I noticed a number of comments with regard to electronic meetings. Unfortunately, it's not our choice. It's based on state law. Right now, the law says that we can continue to meet electronically as long as New York City is in a state of emergency. At such time as that ends, we will need to go back to in-person meetings. Obviously, you're free to wear a mask if you wish to do so. I tend to do so when I'm out among people that I don't see regularly. So, but that as of right now, we're still in a state of emergency, so we're still going to be meeting electronically, but by September, that may change. We have been joined, at least by some, we have 13 new members, beginning with who are eligible now to serve on the board. I see a handful of them in here. I'm not going to ask them to speak, but I'm going to read their names. Helene Davis, Christopher Wong, Corey Stoughton, Brandon West, Emmett Sklar, Deborah Lauder, Elijah Logan, Doug Gordon, Ray Rivera, Samora Coles, Rima Sharma, Jackie Painter, and Madeline Roomley. So I welcome those individuals, and I look forward to an opportunity to meet more of you than a tiny little square on my laptop. But for now, we will make do with meeting each other electronically, and hopefully there'll be an opportunity for us to interact in person in the future. As I mentioned earlier, I need a motion from the floor that allows us to continue to meet electronically as long as New York City is in a state of emergency. So if I can ask someone to make that motion and then someone else to second it, I would appreciate it.
So moved, Peter. I'll second
Motion
it,
by
Peter.
Eric, second by Suzanne.
I'll second it.
Any
Yeah, this is-
discussion of that? Any discussion of that motion?
Yeah, this is Van. I just want to say, I know it's not our choice, but I think there's what we say and do definitely matters. And you begin your meetings apologizing for being remote. And so I think the tone in which you set in the words you speak indicate that you do not like the remote meetings. And in addition, let me finish what I'm saying before you interrupt me. In addition, we can do both. We can have equipment set up so that remote attendance is possible. So, it's not an either or. Now I'm done.
Certainly, if that's allowed, I'm all in favor of it. I've been a member of the community board for more than 25 years, and I will tell you that personal interaction is very important. I honestly don't have a preference. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm sitting in my house in Asbury Park, New Jersey right now. So if we were meeting in person, I'd be in Brooklyn, and I wouldn't have cut the lawn today, and all the other things that I was able to do down here. So not true to say that I have a preference, but I do know the importance of personal interaction. We will follow the rules that are set for us to the extent that we have any influence in a hybrid method, which I think would be great. We'll try and exert that. But I personally only mourn the loss of the personal interactions and the ability to interact with people and to get to know them. But I understand that for some people, this is extreme, this is an easier way to meet, and I sympathize with that. And again, to the extent that we have any influence on it, we will try and see if we can adopt a hybrid model to the extent that that's within our control. So
It's not just about being simple. It's what your words are actually very much ableism. So there are folks with disabilities for whom accessing those sites, like in the past where there's been sites where there's no Wi-Fi, there have been sites where the lighting outside of the entrance of the building was almost non-existent. I had sites where there's massive amount of construction in front of a building and we had to navigate that. So what you're saying counts to ableism, just so you know.
again, we'll do our best to choose better. If we are forced to go back to an in-person model, we'll do the very best we can. I sympathize with that, absolutely. 100%. I agree with you. We haven't met in person in 2 years, but unfortunately, we try and we have the lot of what facilities are available to us. but I'll certainly ask the office, if we do go back to in-person meetings, to make a better effort that these be handicapped accessible in a well-lit area and easier to access for people that have some difficulty with that. I'm totally sympathetic to that. So, absolutely. Any other discussion on this motion before we take a vote? Seeing none, I'm going to presume that you are in favor of the motion that will allow us to meet
Peter, I'm sorry. This is
electronically as
Daniel.
long as possible.
Peter, I'm sorry. This is Daniel. I had to join late. What is the motion that's on the table?
The motion is that we are following state law, which allows us to continue to meet remotely as long as New York City is in a state of emergency. At such time as that changes, we'll follow whatever the state law is at that time. Again, I am totally sympathetic with people for whom this is the preferred method of meeting. But we are at the mercy of the state legislature. Again, to the extent that we have any influence on that, we'll try and exert it. But as of now, we're waiting to see what happens with the state of emergency in New York City.
I guess I'm not sure I understand why there's a need for a motion. That's the current state of the law.
Because the district manager advised me that was appropriate.
Yeah, so the Governor Hochul's council sent myself and the other, I think, 17 district managers in Brooklyn, I'm sure they sent it out to all across the city, saying with further clarification on the open meetings law that it would require us to meet in person. We just have to say, and I agree, Daniel, it's kind of weird because as I started to write it out, like we have to say we're okay with meeting virtually going forward. But however the law is written, that's what is the governor's office required us to do.
We may have to say that at a later time, but that's not really necessary now. But if that's the advice you've gotten from the governor's office.
It is because the state order that allowed us to continue meeting in person expires literally tomorrow. That's why we have to do this today. Like they literally just told us about it because we're not the only board that meets this night, and there were some issues of clarification on this.
Yeah, right. We will do our very best to continue with the status quo, but we may not be in control of that. But certainly, we will do the best we can. So again, if anybody is against this motion, I ask you to raise your hand, and we'll go from there. Otherwise, we're going to presume that you are in favor of this motion. Okay, Joanne Brown is against. My final remarks is just.
Can you record me as an abstention, please?
Sure, Daniel, absolutely. Daniel Coomer abstain. Every day I walk my dog around at least the Park Slope part of Community Board 6, and the other day I had an opportunity to drive along Union Street and up Atlantic Avenue. There's lots of development going on in our neighborhood, and so if to the extent that those people are being bad actors, I urge you to call the community board office. But by and large, we're into an increased phase of development in our district. So, but we want to make sure that those people behave as we expect them to. So if you have any problems with anything, I know there were some other problems and difficulties. So, okay, I understand we've been joined by Assemblymember Joanne Simon. So I'm going to ask her to unmute herself and give her an opportunity to speak. Joanne. There she is. You have to unmute yourself, Joanne.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's
I'm
okay.
juggling Zooms and community boards because I am. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm glad to see everybody here tonight. I just wanted to do a quick report. As you may know, we are done with the legislative session. I don't know if you've heard from my any colleagues tonight, but it was a very long last week with a lot of late nights and an all-nighter on Friday. And we were able to pass a number of really important bills and didn't get to do some other things that a lot of people care about. So I'm just going to reduce this here on the other Zoom, excuse me. And so I just wanted to say that, New York is proudly standing for choice. We are ensuring that women and pregnant people have an ability to get the healthcare that they need, whether it's reproductive healthcare, whether it's contraception, whether it's abortion. We are making it easier for people to access. We are providing support for people so that people are not left out because of a lack of funding. Or health insurance, for example, to get those services. And we are welcoming people who we know will end up needing our services here in New York from other states after the Supreme Court issues a decision that we anticipate will be very negative when it comes to Roe versus Wade. We have a draft opinion. As you know, that draft opinion is pretty scary because it foretells a lot of other concerns that I think we have in our society. We haven't got the final decision, so we'll wait to see that. But we are already planning to help people from other parts of our country to get the healthcare that they need. We also passed the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act. I was a prime co-sponsor of that. Senator Myrie, that was his and Assemblymember Latrice Walker was their bill, and it mirrors and really makes it the strongest Voting Rights Act in the states, right? So New York State now is leading when it comes to voting rights, and we're very proud of that. And I think that the public has a right to should be very proud of that as well, because we want people to vote, we want people to vote safely, and we want to ensure that everybody is able to exercise their franchise. We also took action on speed cameras to expand that program. We instituted smaller class sizes. That was a bill that I carried originally, a slightly different bill, got passed in the last days of session. But that's very important because it's important to quality education to students wherever they are. It is important for the workforce in terms of teachers, and it's also critically important to Mayor Adams' effort to address the needs of children with dyslexia, other reading disabilities, and really just small class helps all students learn. So we're really very pleased that we were able to begin that process of reducing class size over the next several years. We'll be doing that in a phased-in approach. I also want to say that, Assemblymember Carroll had the Build Public Renewables Act, which I was a co-sponsor of as well. And we were not able to get that passed. Many of us fought very hard for that. But the speaker has announced that there will be a hearing in July 28th. So anybody who is concerned, anybody who is working on this issue through whatever group they might be involved with should reach out to the Assembly so that they could testify at this hearing. And I think that'll be very, very important because there's a lot of concern, a lot of misinformation, and also some concern of whether or not we will have the capacity. And I think we really want to hear from witnesses about that capacity, because I believe we do have that capacity, we will have that capacity, but we need to make sure that people feel confident in the capacity that we have and that we will be building. Similarly, we also took action against crypto mining of a particular type at particular locations, which are dirty fossil fuel burning plants upstate New York. They would actually add to carbon in the environment, and they would really be destructive. And so we have put a moratorium on that, and we'll be investigating that further and looking for ways that we can address that issue going forward. And that's something we passed as well. And today, I just want to say that I was very happy. It's not in CB6, but I know a lot of people care about these issues. We opened the Brooklyn Heights Library, which is really magnificent. It was a small, teeny library that did well serve the public, but the public was very attached to the library they had. And there was a lot of sturm and drang about building a tall building with this brand new library, but it is wonderful. I hope you saw some of the press reports on TV. It really is magnificent. It is accessible to people with disabilities. It keeps kids have their own section, young kids. Teenagers have their own gaming room and their section, and it really is a wonderful community space that community can actually use as well for meetings and things like that. So I think they did a really outstanding job, and it is now it's the largest library in Brooklyn, except for the big library at Grand Army Plaza, the central branch. So I was very happy to be there today and help cut the ribbon to open that facility. So I'm happy to answer any questions as you have them, but I did want to get back to you and let you know. I know that for some of you, we had talked about where are the lines for our various districts. There is a lawsuit still pending. I don't know what they're going to do with regard to the assembly line. So, hey, we don't know what will happen. The Senate lines and the congressional lines have been approved. There is a primary in August, and those congressional lines in our district are now Congressional District 10. And some of us have are involved in that in a different capacity. So I will leave it at that, but I wanted to get back to you and let you know about that.
One person has a question. We'll entertain that.
Sure. Who is that?
I don't see anyone, Joanne. Thank you so much.
All righty. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. District Manager's report.
Peter, do you want to did you do the minutes?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Don't all volunteer at once.
Yes, I'll volunteer. I approve the moments for the meeting.
Okay, that was Karen, I think. Second by you, Alec. Anyone who is against, you can mark me as abstaining since I was not able to attend. So I don't know that they're accurate or not. I'm not saying they aren't, but just mark me as an abstention, please. Okay, now we will move on to the district manager's report.
Sure thing. I'll be brief. Thank you for everyone who you might hear it in my voice. I'm still not 100%, but as I've mentioned, I've been sick in my newsletter. So thank you to everyone who reached out saying they hope I felt better. And also to some of the new members, we have found out, I've reached out to, it's been great to meet some of you, and we'll be reaching out throughout. And we have a form for committee assignments and things of that nature, and we'll speak to that directly going forward. Like I did last month, I'm just going to drop in the middle of this a few of the upcoming meetings that we have. Like I said, I don't have a ton of energy, but there's a Red Hook Coastal Resiliency meeting that DDC had asked me to post about. So I'll share that in the chat for everybody. And if you want to receive more information from my newsletter, feel free to shoot me an email, mike@bkcb6.org. Or text BKCB6 to 22828, and you can sign up and be looped in on that. And even if you want me to share something, let me know. I know even various people have asked, block associations have asked to be included on things of that nature, and a lot of stuff happening over the summer. And so thank you to everybody who shares it, and thanks. That's it.
Thanks, Mike. So we have three motions to consider tonight, one land use and two landmarks. We're going to do the land use one first. I will just remind everyone that only members of Brooklyn Community Board 6 are permitted to speak during the debate on that item. And because this is an item of some controversy where an exact vote will be important, Mike is prepared to do a roll call vote. Which we will do when it's time for us to vote on that. So I recognize Alec Scherenbeck, the chair of the Land Use Committee and ask him to unmute himself and discuss the motion that he and his committee considered.
Thank you, Peter. It's nice to see a lot of new faces here. Welcome, everyone. So this is an application for a proposed rezoning on 9th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. And it involves 16 different tax lots. And there's a particular project on 3 of those lots. The entire area is zoned for M and has been zoned M since 1961 when we started that kind of thing. But the historic uses on all the properties are residential. So in particular, the main project that's proposed is on 3 parking lots that were residential going back to the 19th century. But then those residential buildings were demolished in the 1970s. So that's a little bit of big picture context, and then we'll work our way through the presentation. The application, again, involves 16 lots, and it's for 3 different approvals. One is to change the zoning from M21 to, sorry, I lost my notes, to M14 R7A. There's a special permit to waive residential off-street parking. And there's a zoning text amendment to designate a mandatory inclusionary housing area and a mixed-use district to facilitate, among other things, a 9-story mixed-use development that would have 48 dwelling units and ground floor commercial space. Okay. Ty, can we go to the next slide? Okay, here is a general picture of the zoning map. And I want to point out a couple of things here. First, this whole area is zoned M21, even though predominantly there are residential uses on the site, like I mentioned before. And then you see the IBZ. A lot of what the debate on this application has been about is its relationship to the IBZ. So there are parts of this very block, in fact, next to this project, that are in the IBZ. The proposal itself isn't in the IBZ, but there are concerns from many about how the application would affect businesses in the IBZ. Can we go to the next slide, Ty? This is the center of the block and the sort of current parking lot that is slated under this proposal to become housing, 48 units of housing and ground floor commercial. As I mentioned before, there was residential use on this site. It was demolished in the 1970s. It's been a parking lot ever since. Can we go to the next slide, Ty? And this is what the building might look like if it were built. It's 95 feet tall, which is the maximum that is allowed under the proposed rezoning. And there's ground floor residential. Now I caution everyone, this is like some people might think this is a handsome building. Some people might think it's too tall. The important thing to keep in mind is that we're approving changes to the zoning, not an individual building. And so in some ways this is helpful. In some ways it's a bit of a red herring, right? Because someone could show us this picture and then build something that looked quite a bit different. What we do know is how tall it can be under the zoning, 95 feet. We know how much housing someone can build, whether they can include manufacturing, et cetera. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, what are the actions? Next slide. This is to change the zoning from M21 to M14 R7A. Next slide. Okay, well, this is the zoning map itself, and you can see on the right, surrounded by little dots, is the proposed rezoning to that M14 R7A. If you see it, it's dead center on the right side of that slide. Next slide, please. Here's another look. And I think this one's maybe particularly helpful. So again, this whole thing is M2, 1. The area surrounded by dots is the proposed rezoning area. The red portion there is the proposed development by this applicant, which will be that handsome building, whatever that building that I just showed you, whatever that is. And then and you see there's that red area that borders 8th Street. That's not going to be developed, but they're transferring development rights from that 8th Street lot to the building that would be fronted on 9th Street. And I believe that that development rights transfer is for the commercial portion of the site. I think that's right. Okay, next slide, please. Here again is the map, and this slide shows up a lot in this presentation. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, here's some pictures for context of this block. Again, on the top left, you're seeing the parking lots. This on 8th Street is, I believe, the lot that would transfer some of its development rights. And then there's a picture of 8th Street looking toward 3rd Avenue from 2nd Avenue. So that's behind this application, which mostly concerns 9th Street. Can we go to the next slide? Here are some other views of what's happening here. It's notable for folks who are thinking about like what is high in context. There's this, running up 9th Street is the sort of viaduct for the F train. And so that is a notable feature of the 9th Street on the 10th Street side of the block. And we're seeing some more pictures of 9th Street. Okay, next slide. And some more pictures of the block. Next slide, please. And one more. Okay, can we go to slide 17, Ty?
This is what you want, I think, right here.
Okay, great. So this is a breakdown of all of the lots in the rezoned area. So I just want to point out again some things that the uses are residential primarily. There is one warehouse within the area. And that is, I think, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Dineen Construction operates out of there. I've been walking past the block a few times, and when it's open, that appears to be the use inside that lot. Otherwise, there are residential apartments of varying sizes. There is a single family home. There are lots that have 5 units. There's one lot that has as many as 8 units. And then there is the parking lot itself. Can we go to 19? Okay, well, this is, let's see. Right, this is showing the initial zoning, I believe, in 1961 that led us here. And you can see in 1961, this was zoned to be in the M21 area. Can we go to slide 23? This is the applicant saying again that this is not in the IBZ, but remember, again, it's right next to the IBZ. 24. This is so for everybody understands, this is the map of the IBZ writ large. And so you can see it sort of hugs this part of Gowanus. It goes all the way down through parts of Sunset Park. It goes into Red Hook. Can we go to 29? This, I picked this slide, which is, I believe, a selection from the city's IBZ report, but I picked it to show you how the IBZ fits in on this part of 9th Street. As you can see, it's sort of, there's a bite into the IBZ, and this is part of that that carve out of the IBZ. So the IBZ covers parts of this block, but not this area. Can we go to 32? This is the applicant pointing out that, what they're asking for is not just the ability to add, to have more dense residential uses. They're also asking for this waiver of parking requirements. And I think this slide goes to show the access to public transit on this 9th Street corridor. It's sort of equidistant on 9th Street between the Smith 9th Street stop and the 4th Avenue stop. And so you have an access to, the F and the G and the R train. Sorry, I got a distracting message. And then 33. This is the applicant pointing out that the zoning designation that they're looking for has a precedent in the neighborhood on Union Street. And the applicant was making a lot of the following. The purpose of their project is to build this residential thing and this commercial project, right, together. But the zoning that they're proposing actually allows for industrial uses to continue on these properties in a mixed use character, a lot like the Gowanus mix that was a part of the Gowanus rezoning that, the board approved and that went through. And so on sites, you can have up to 2 FAR for like a maker space or industrial use. And then the rest of the FAR, which I believe goes up to 2.6, so a total of 4.6, can be residential under this zoning designation. Okay, can we go to 42? Okay, I'm not sure why I wanted that one. How about 48? Well, Ty, I think maybe our wires are crossed on this, but it's okay. So let me just hit the main points I want to cover, and then obviously throw it to everyone. I want to point out that this zoning designation will permit industrial uses, commercial uses, residential uses, and community facilities. Under default zoning, there is a requirement that 50% of the dwelling units include, except for affordable units, include parking. So they're asking for a waiver of that parking requirement. And in addition, what they're trying to do is map mandatory inclusionary housing, which is the zoning tool that we've seen in a lot of the Gowanus rezoning. And what that does is requires a set aside of a certain number of units in a development to be affordable. And so there's going to be market rate units that subsidize affordable units. Now you're going to ask, what is affordable? That's a great question. Okay, so they're proposing an option called option 1, where it'd be 60% of area median income is the average for the affordable units. That is a family of 3 earning about $72,000. 10% of the units would have to be at 40% of AMI. That's a family of 3 earning $48,000. Okay. Now, if you were in that 40% AMI, just to paint a picture for everyone, a maximum 1 bedroom would rent at $1,000 a month. So $1,000 a month for a 1 bedroom if you're 40% AMI. If you're 60% AMI, a maximum 1 bedroom would cost $1,500 a month. Okay, so that sort of paints a picture of what these affordable units would rent for under this proposal. And so what did we make of this proposal? The committee voted to disapprove this proposed rezoning, 11-4. The committee gave the following reasons. One, they said that the proposed rezoning threatens the IBZ and is inconsistent with the board's support for the IBZ. Second, they said that the proposed 9-story development in the center is out of character with the rest of the block. And three, they said that the applicant failed to demonstrate support from surrounding property owners. So that is the resolution that we'd be voting on today. Glenn made the motion. It passed. I personally voted against the motion, and I'm happy to explain why later, but you know, Glenn's here. Glenn, it was your motion. Would you like to explain some more of the thinking behind your motion?
Sure, and I just put it in the chat. Community Board 6 has been vocal for a very long time about the need to strengthen our manufacturing areas, and this would be contrary to what we've been pushing for and asking the city to take another look at the IBZ and work to improve it and strengthen it and not allow this constant whittling away. If we take seriously the need for manufacturing, small business, and jobs, then we can't just roll over every time somebody says, oh, I'll give you a couple of units of affordable housing, 12 units here, 2 units there. And then they poke holes in the manufacturing areas and they become less viable. So, if we want to take another look at the IBZ, then we should do it holistically and not piecemeal, because we're not going to have a good result that way.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. So, I think that really does summarize where a lot of people on the committee were coming from. And I'll just say one piece on my differing perspective, and then Peter, please, however you'd like to proceed. From my perspective, we need a lot more affordable housing in our neighborhood. And this rezoning would provide apartments at a level of affordability that is really difficult to come by in our neighborhood, almost impossible. $1,000 a month for a 1-bedroom is difficult to look by. I pulled up Street Easy and looked at all of the apartments, all of the apartment buildings and their public listings in this area. And I couldn't find a cheaper 1-bedroom listed than $1,750. I saw a studio also that was $1,800. And so that speaks to sort of what could be happening in the rezoned area now versus what we might get from a rezoning. And I can't think of a more appropriate place to do affordable housing than on a parking lot. Now, I understand the concerns about the IBZ, but this area isn't in the IBZ. These lots are historically residential. And I think what's being lost in this conversation is that you can have industrial uses under this zoning designation. This is a mixed use zoning designation. So if somebody wants to have industrial and residential in these properties with the new affordable housing, they can get that. So I think we're pitting industrial versus residential here in an inappropriate way. And then finally, I just wanted to say on the parking, 9th Street has great access to public transit. And so it's an appropriate place to do a parking waiver. And I also think that having parking and having more cars would actually increase some of the conflicts between industrial users on the road and residential users on the road that I know some people are concerned about with the IBZ. I think we want fewer residential car uses on the road to protect the IBZ. And finally, I just want to say that, if this resolution goes through, totally understand, I'll be voting against it. If it does vote down, I plan to propose a resolution that would approve this conditionally with a number of proposals to strengthen the IBZ and to increase the affordability on the site. So thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Alec. Before we begin, I ask if you have something to say to please raise your hand. I also ask you to please be polite. And if someone has already made your point, it's okay to say, I agree with Tom, I agree with Mary, I agree with Sally, and end it at that. Also, remember that in order to speak, you need to unmute yourself. So the first hand I see raised is Hildegard. So Hildegard, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, wow, this is like so smart and well considered. It was really a pleasure listening to both Alec and Glenn speak. I have to Really, I've rarely been as impressed with the thoughtfulness of our group. So my concern is, so we have the median regional median. Oh, Alec, what do you call it? The income?
Area median income.
Thank you. Okay, so the area median income. So is this community board 6? You know, that's question number 1. But the next question is, so this is rezoned, and so nothing happens for 10 years, and the area median income changes, goes up. So then 40, 60%, 20% is going to be really different, and whatever you called it, proposal 1 or whatever it was, that sounds like, that's wow, yeah. On the other hand, we really don't, I mean, it's respectfully and affectionately, it's really kind of pie in the sky, isn't it? I mean, we're not really guaranteed that we're going to have this kind of access once buildings are constructed. Typically, buildings don't go up like instantaneously. So by the time the building is actually constructed, the median VAT will change, and probably for the worse. You understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah, can I, because you had a question,
Yes.
if I can just clarify. So the area median income isn't just based on our neighborhood or neighboring, it's actually based on a region, right? And people criticize it because it's not a good measure of actually what's happening in our neighborhood because it is based on the region. So I think the important thing to look at is like, what is the actual income level? You're right, as the region's income goes up, if it will go up, that would mean that the amount that you'd have to earn to qualify or be aged out of that bracket will also change. But unregulated market rate units also go up. We're seeing a lot of that now. So I think it's a little apples to oranges to say area median income is going to go up and ignore that rents, unregulated landlords are hiking rents all over our neighborhood right now. And they're going to continue to do so long as they can keep making money doing so. So that's sort of.
So one more question. So region, is it like, Southeastern New York, New York City, Brooklyn? What is the region?
Okay, I am going to Google this and I will put in the chat the exact answer. I believe
it's larger than New York City. It's larger than New York City.
It's larger than New York City. I just can't remember whether it includes like all of Westchester or only part of Westchester.
Oh my God, Westchester is like really scary.
Yeah, no, it's like a metro region. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alec. That was really well done.
All right, the next hand I see is Eric's, and I need to step away for about 30 to 45 seconds. So if Eric finishes before I return, I would just ask us to go on to Joanna, but otherwise, Eric, I recognize you, please.
Thanks, Peter, and I will try to be brief, though probably not briefer than 45 seconds. But if I am, then I will step in as first vice chair to recognize the next speaker. Thank you, Alec and Glenn, for your overviews. I just want to say that I intend to vote against the motion that was passed so that we reopen this question, and I intend to support Alec's. I anticipate supporting a motion that Alec would make in its place. I think this is an appropriate place for the project that is being proposed and the zoning. I support the applicant's move to get a waiver for parking. The 9th Street is a bus route, 3rd Avenue is a bus route, and it's 100 feet from the 4th Avenue F and G and R lines. So it's extremely well served by transit. I will post in the chat. I just came across an article this morning from Quartz about the median rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, which was just noted at $3,995. That's the median for a 1-bedroom in Manhattan. I assume CB6 is a little bit lower, but probably not significantly lower given the desirability of the neighborhoods that we live in. So the fact that somebody would be able to rent a 1-bedroom for $1,000 at 40% of AMI or for $1,500 a month at 60% of AMI is a really significant opportunity for someone trying to live in this neighborhood, a working class family or working class individuals. So I think it's important that we continue to work to increase our housing supply. Because this site is outside of the IBZ, I don't see it as an existential threat to the IBZ. I think the board has worked for a long time to strengthen the IBZ and will continue to do so. And I don't see this in conflict with that. So I will vote against the motion that was passed by the committee and support a counter motion that moves to endorse this. Thank you. And I think Peter is not back. So Joanna, the temporary chair, recognizes you.
Thank you. Yes, so I was one of the people who voted to disapprove this, but I've been sitting with that decision for a week or so and thinking that I really want all these tax lots of the parking lot in particular to be used to their highest and best use, which is not a parking lot. As has been mentioned, housing crisis. We need the units in the district. I'm considering changing my position on this, but I have a couple of conditions that I just wanted everybody to consider. Just things I'm concerned about that are sticking points. Big one is displacement concerns for people who currently live on the block. There was talk at the committee level about a lot of the smaller buildings on 8th Street on the same block being able to, in the future, sell their air rights to landowners on 9th Street that would result in them demolishing the existing housing stock to go big, which is what we need. We need to go big, but I would want to see some kind of assurance to existing renters at the location that they get priority for any new units built and get assistance for gap housing while the construction's happening. I think that would be really important for us to do. And yeah, something we could add as a condition. Another thing is I want to guarantee from the developers of the current project that we're considering that they'll really do above and beyond to maintain the right of way around the construction site for current neighborhood residents. This is a very narrow roadway. It already just has sharrows for a very important part of our bike network. Pedestrians need to be able to get by the site, and we're already seeing in Gowanus a lot of ignoring of our rules. So that would be another condition I would want to see. I am concerned about the mature trees on the site being impacted. I'd want to make sure that those were protected. And I also want to encourage the owner of the current project to consider the sanity and financial risk of putting active commercial use at a cellar level on a block that is already prone to flooding and that is certainly going to be more prone to flooding as we have more and more extreme weather events due to climate change. So yeah, having vocalized all of these things, I'm hoping that we'll consider adding them, but I really do want to see this site turn into housing, and I really want to protect the people who already live on the block in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. The next person I see is David Briggs.
Hello. So, I don't think anybody here is against housing, particularly given the housing crisis we are existing with and it's upon us. But I had some real concerns with this proposal, and I'll just go through them quickly. We keep talking about the IBZ, but I think really in fairness to the conversation, we need to talk about the entire manufacturing area that's east of the canal, south of Whole Foods, down to Hamilton Avenue, because that really is the context of the manufacturing area that was carved out and not rezoned as part of the Gowanus rezoning. There's a map of that around somewhere, but I don't think we have it available tonight. Second point, 16 lots, and the applicant, I think, even said this, that allows for, it's already happening, transfer of floor areas. So, once you rezone that many lots, the property values are going to go up. That's a given. And as the property values go up, development interests take hold. And people will want to sell their two-story home, and maybe the person next to them, and there's a lot of swapping that can happen back and forth, and we'll just get more residential. And as we get more residential and bigger buildings, the rents go up, and that leads to gentrification. There's a proven history of that in New York City, Soho, and then more recently Williamsburg. But as more housing, high-end housing, market rate housing moves into the community, it just gets more expensive for people to live there. So that starts creating sort of a, I'm going to use a weird word here, but a monoculture of demographic, if you will. In my mind, ecosystems apply not only to nature, but they apply to land use. There needs to be diversity of uses, diversity of people. And I don't think this project supports that path. The Gowanus rezoning gave us 3,000 non-market rate units. Initially, when the applicant made his proposal, I think it was all, I'm not sure the option numbers, maybe it was option 3, but the 60% AMI option, which would have allowed, I believe, for 12 units. He agreed to add the 40% option, which actually reduces the number of units. And my concern again is, so what's our target here? We have 3,000 coming online. Is adding 12 or 10 really going to move, you know, the bar at all? I just don't see that having a huge impact. And then finally, everybody is making this point about the boundary of the IBZ and other boundaries, and we have to, and you know, the residential block. That's not a good way to approach land use or a community. We're not defined by the boundaries of our streets and our blocks. We're defined by our people. And if there was a more ambitious proposal here to actually, you know, sitting down with some of the manufacturing community to make sure 4 or 5 stories of this was manufacturing use and the rest residential use, I'd be more interested in the project, but that is not what the guy wants to do. So I can't support the project in its current form. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. The next hand I see is Daniel.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was actually next, but
Rick changed his mind a couple times. I put him at the end of the list.
I see. Okay, I voted in favor of the motion to disapprove this application for all the reasons that Dave just articulated, which I will not repeat, and was also moved by the you know, the displacement concerns that were very, I would say, you know, vividly outlined by actual residents, as Joanna outlined, and I frankly don't think that those are concerns that we can remedy through conditions that we might attach to an alternative motion here tonight. You know, we opt for this in part for the simple reason that we don't have the applicant here with us. And I also just wanted to get a clarification that the affordable housing elements of this proposal are only binding on this applicant, as I understand it. Alec, can you confirm that? This is not, this would not be linked to all of the rezoned lots. The other rezoned lots would be, they would come in with their own proposals of what to build.
I think the way to think about it, Daniel, is that the rezoning would make this whole rezoned area, all 16 lots, have the MIH, right? And then it's up to the developer to decide, are they going to get that density bonus, which they get, and then in return they give affordable units, or are they not going to do that, right?
Okay, so the MIH would be attached to all of these rezoned lots?
That's my understanding. Like, so the
all
whole
right,
rezoned area includes MIH. So if you know, there's that 1-story garage property, for example, that's currently a warehouse, someone could decide they want to do a project there that would have 25% affordable and a commercial on the ground or an industrial use on the ground, and then residential on top and MIH. They could decide not to use MIH, not get that bonus. And okay, sorry.
they could decide to, right, to forego the MIH benefits as well. So it's,
Right,
you know,
but
while
they have
it-
a financial
well,
incentive to take
they
advantage
have a
of it.
financial incentive now. I mean, as we've seen, incentives come and go as they just are about, as 421A is about to do in Albany. I mean, I appreciate that clarification, but it doesn't change my my vote. I would continue to vote in favor of this motion to disapprove. I think we need to be careful when we are calling the vote on what people are voting for and against.
Thanks, Daniel. Van, you're next.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify a few things. So it's what's been said is right. The AMI or area median income for the inclusionary housing includes a large area. So Westchester, for example, Rockland County, so these suburbs that have their own area median incomes that are higher than New York's area median income. So, you know, we're talking about one small project, but it's actually we're harmed by the suburbs far more than we would be by this one project. So I just want everyone to realize that. And just to give you some context, so some rent numbers that were given. You can't really find a one bedroom for probably under $2,500 in that area. If it were listed for less than 2,000, it's going to have a line of 100 people and it'll get bid up. So any inclusionary housing is a benefit in my eyes. To give you some idea, you could go as far down as Sunset Park and you can't get a one bedroom for $1,700 or $1,500, or forget $1,000. That's, I don't even know if you can do that anywhere in Brooklyn for a market rate apartment. So I think people have to realize that this housing crisis is far more acute at the very bottom in terms of income qualifications. And just to reiterate, what we all know, at least I think we know, most landlords, and I'm one, I have apartments in New York City. Most landlords require at least 40 times 1 month rent for a market rate apartment. And in the current market, there's no reason that a landlord has to go below that requirement because people are way above it from the demand. So what does that mean? So like $4,000 a month, you have to make $160,000 a year minimum to even be viewed by a landlord for a market rate apartment. $1,000, you have to make $40,000. So I think when we really start looking at these things, and many of us are privileged, and including myself, I don't experience that struggle, but I try to help people who do have lower incomes find housing. It's an extremely acute problem, and it's not an existential problem for the people who are looking for the housing. And yes, buildings take time to go up. But by the time they go up, the median income in this area is going to go up. The median income for inclusionary housing may not go up that much because we're affected by the suburbs more. But what is, the trouble of getting a market rate apartment is only going to get worse by the time this building gets completed. So, those are some of the reasons why I support the project, and I voted the way I did in the committee. Thanks.
Thanks, Van. Rick.
Hi. Sorry, is it me?
No, I can hear you.
I keep lowering and raising my hand because I keep finding myself agreeing with successive people and thinking, oh, they just said it. So I will support what David and Glenn said. I think that the concept that, yes, we need more housing to address the housing crisis, I absolutely understand. But 12 units is not in the context of now the rezoning with 3,000 units coming in, it's a red herring. And I just, affordable housing always sounds great, and it is great. But if you're talking about, again, detrimental to the IBZ and manufacturing more broadly in the area, job creation and retention is also vitally important. So, I just think we have to put the housing in a relative context, not just say, oh, we need more affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Brandon.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here. So I as someone who's been displaced twice in the last year and a half, very much concerned about, that general issue. But I think I wasn't part of, obviously, I'm new, so I wasn't part of the earlier conversations about the rationale of the committee. And, I have issues with the proposal, but there are versions of it could be improved, and it could be a version of that I would be more supportive of, so I don't know exactly the logic of like what will play out if we just, vote no. Is the developer going to come back with something different? How are we going to be able to leverage that? And, if they just go off and do something else and move to a different site, so I don't know if someone could speak about the logic of folks who wanted to make changes to the proposal and why folks are deciding to vote no as opposed to voting yes with additional recommendations to it. But I think even beyond that, we don't have any of the tools to maintain, the housing stock in a way that's like fair and just to people. Like that's just, we don't have those tools right now. Displacement will be happening regardless of how we vote on this. So I think that, if there is, if this development is coming, then it behooves us to try to get the most out of the project. But I think there's like more to it than that. But I would love some more information on exactly the reason, the rationale, folks, to if there's ways to leverage more out of this or not.
Great, thank you, Brandon. Angelica.
I'm going to offer a slightly different perspective, and I voted the same way that Alec and Van did, and I will continue to vote that way. I love my neighborhood, I love CB6, but it looks like other parts of the country that are not dense. So I'm in Nebraska right now. Park Slope looks more like Nebraska than New York City, and it can't support the people that want to live there. So if we are able to provide more housing, we should. I am a renter. I live with 9 other people in Park Slope, and I work on the climate crisis. And I am in favor of this, and I think we can work together to find the tools to make sure that new buildings are built in a way that makes sense for the future and that more people like me can stay in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Before we recognize people for a second time, is there anyone else? Paul, I see Paul.
Thank you, Peter. A lot of great points that were made, but I just want to reiterate again, as all agree that we have a housing crisis, we have to acknowledge that we have a manufacturing crisis in this country. It's not the sexiest, it's not the most profitable, it's not the greatest, prettiest use, but it's what Gowanus has been for many years. Alec points out that this area was historically residential. Most of, if not all of Gowanus was historically residential. We have to look at the ecosystem as it stands and find the balance. We were told with the previous rezoning that we would look at a comprehensive way forward around the IBZ. I agree with David that we can't just look at the IBZ. It narrows the scope of the impact that a project like this has on the businesses that are here and call Gowanus home. They have dreams, they have hopes of staying, they want to grow their businesses, they have families that run these businesses. We were promised that we would look at this area in a comprehensive way, in a more ecosystem way, in a way that is sustainable, not only for the affordability crisis of housing, but for the affordability and the space limitations that the manufacturing community has here. Please just look at this in a holistic way. It's not just about housing. It's not just about manufacturing. It's about both. And we have to do this in a respectful way that allows everyone in this area to find a future here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Doug, please remember to unmute.
Yeah, thanks. And hello, and I'm really proud to be a member now, a full board member, so glad to be here. There's some criticism that this is being done piecemeal. I guess the counter argument to that is that the current housing crisis is the result of piecemeal politics. There's a 1-bedroom apartment in my building that is on the market now for $6,000 a month. 3 years ago, it was $4,000 a month. That was a piecemeal process that has allowed the housing crisis to just run rampant. There's some criticism that this is only 12 apartments. Well, and it won't make a difference. It will make a difference to the 12 families that can move into those 12 apartments. And if every community board says, well, it's only 12 apartments, we suddenly have hundreds of apartments that don't get on the market and don't go to people who need a place to live. You know, I will be voting with Eric, with Angelica, with Alec, with others. I do think we just need more housing. And if piecemeal is what it takes to get 12 apartments and to get something out of this, let's do it, because the alternative is that the few residential lots on that block get sold and go to very wealthy people who can afford to just continue them as single family homes, only much more luxurious. So thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Peter, I would like to insert a point of clarification on something that was said before regarding MIH. The parking lots are large enough that MIH will be a factor. MIH will apply to all of the row houses that are the bulk of this zoning change, but it won't really affect them. You might recall that MIH has certain exemptions. So any building with 10 or less apartments does not have to provide affordable housing. If it's below a certain number of square feet, and off the top of my head, I don't recall what that is, but these small buildings are not going to provide any affordable housing unless they're combined into a larger lot. So it's a safe bet that the individual landowners there could build, I don't know, 8 units or 10 units and not provide any affordable housing. So we're not going to see any affordable housing benefit, or it's less likely that we see affordable housing benefit from those other lots.
Thank you, Glenn. We've been at this for a while, but I'm going to recognize the people who have their hands up for the first time. And then I think we should be taking a vote on this. So Pauline is next, then Kara, then Mark, and then we're going to take a vote.
Hi, this is Pauline Blake, and I'm a member of the committee, and I voted for this motion for 2 reasons. And the first is the fact that as a minority living in Park Slope, I find it so difficult that most of our developers have to use the gimmick of affordable housing for these projects. Because if you look at the history of the developments that have been completed in Brooklyn, most of those units have been abandoned on the process that cost overrun. They have been able to negotiate with the city, and the city has allowed them to buy out of such programs after having given them the option to build for inclusionary housing. And I'm also concerned that this developer, who happens to have relatives on 8th Street, can now buy the height requirement to allow him to increase the height on 9th Street without looking at the problems that the people on 9th Street have had for years. Have we corrected the sewer problem? Have we done anything to alleviate the concerns and the problems of minority homeowners who will be impacted on negatively in this development? Those are the issues I look on when I look on this developer's promise to provide inclusionary housing. Because don't forget, promise me anything, give it to me in a preliminary process does not guarantee that I will have it when the project is complete. Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. Kara, and then Mark.
Hi, I plan on voting no to disapprove this motion, and I urge my fellow board members to do the same. I just want to reemphasize that we are in a housing crisis, and of course, our city's piecemeal planning process is extremely flawed in terms of addressing housing. But we do have a responsibility as board members to make sure that we're increasing housing and especially mandatory and inclusionary housing as often as we can to make sure that we're reducing housing costs and just increasing the supply of housing both here and helping around the entire city, and that this is not in the IBZ, and developers can still choose to use the manufacturing zoning designation because this will be a mixed use zoning. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Mark, last person.
Hey, everyone. Just real quick, agree with Kara, Eric, Doug, Alec. Anybody who's looking for apartments right now knows that it's just insanely out of control, and we do need bigger solutions. But the proposal in front of us is what's in front of us and what we can affect. So I will be voting against the existing motion and supporting any follow-ups to allow the zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Mike, you're prepared to call the roll so that we can take a roll call vote, please? Mike, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm just going to be going off what I have in front of me on Zoom because the list is a little, I said.
All right, as long as somebody's keeping track of it, that's fine.
Ty and I are in discussions on this. Hang on one second. Okay.
I'm ready to tally.
Okay, first, Tiffany Reed Brown.
Oh, can I just clarify that a vote yes is a vote not to allow this building to be built under current circumstances. A no vote is a desire for a different outcome.
No, it's not, but we're not voting against the building, Peter. It's
All right,
voting
I'm
against
the change in zoning. I apologize.
change in zoning.
A yes vote is to disapprove of the change in zoning. A no vote is to desire a different outcome, which is pending the results of this vote.
Yes, thank you.
All right, everyone, please unmute. I know that because I was going to go with. All right, Van.
No.
So you're voting to disapprove the zoning. You're voting to disapprove the motion from the committee.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Suzanne.
Remember to unmute yourself. You're back on mute again, Suzanne.
Voting to disapprove.
You're voting to disapprove the motion.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 2 against the motion. Reg.
No.
On the motion, you're no on the motion.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, I'm just making sure. Rachel.
Rachel was on earlier and she
I'm
said
here.
that-
Oh, you're here. Okay, yeah, Rachel.
Yeah, no.
No, okay. Paul.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay. Neil.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, you're in favor of the motion. Okay. Rebecca Colbert. She actually just messaged
I'm
me.
here.
You're here? Okay, yeah, Rebecca.
Yes.
So you're
No.
voting to disapprove
no.
the motion. Okay.
Correct.
Sorry. All right. Natasha Campbell.
Yes.
Okay. Mark Torrance.
No.
Madeline Roomley.
No.
Okay. Kara Girl.
Remember to unmute, please.
Kara. She just spoke and she's here. Okay, I'll go back to her. John Heyer, I know he's here.
Against the motion, Michael?
Yes, you're okay, correct. Joanna Smith.
No.
You're against the motion? Joanna?
No, yeah, I'm voting no right now.
Okay.
I am against. the
Gotcha,
motion.
okay. Eric McClure,
I vote no against the motion.
Doug Gordon,
I vote no against the motion.
Daniel Coomer,
Yes.
Deb Scotto,
No.
gotcha. Gotcha. Angelica,
No.
Brandon West,
No against the motion.
I'm gonna go back to Kara Girl,
No against the motion.
and I think that is.
Mike, you never called me.
They didn't call me.
David. Wait, why are you not?
Didn't
calling
call
me?
me either.
Okay, hang on. Mark Shames,
No.
David Briggs,
Yes.
Tiffany Reed Brown,
No.
Joanne Brown,
No.
Evan Farley,
No.
Dolly Williams,
Remember to unmute, please. Come back to her.
okay, Karen Broughton,
No to the motion, Mike.
gotcha. Hildegard,
No.
Leroy,
No.
and I know Emmett Sklar, a new member, was here, but I don't see him. Is there anyone else that I missed?
Yes, Mike. It's Rick.
Oh, Rick, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, Rick.
I vote yes to support the motion to disapprove,
Okay,
to go with the committee.
thank you.
Mike, you did not call for.
Pauline, you're next. Sorry. The list is, sorry, it's not exactly what we usually have, so I'm going on here. So, okay. Pauline Blake,
Yes, I'm voting yes for the motion.
gotcha. Chris Wong,
No.
no on the motion. Okay. Is there anyone here that I did not call on?
Mike,
Glenn,
I'm against the
Glenn
motion.
Kelly votes yes.
Glenn Kelly, yes. Did I go with Alec? Did I call? I don't think I called you. 'Cause you're not.
No, you didn't. I'm a no. I'm a no.
Alec is a no. Oh, that's why. Okay, I made a note of that. Sorry. And then
No, Tia, no.
who?
Misha.
Oh, Kaimisha, no. Okay. Gotcha. Is there anyone else?
Is there anyone else we didn't call?
Because we'll leave you out of it, Peter, at this point, because
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
appear my vote is needed right now.
so what is the tally you have there, Ty?
I have 25 noes, 8 yays, 0 abstentions.
All right, so the motion to disapprove has failed. And
So I'm
now
going to recognize Alec to make an alternate motion.
Thank you, Peter. I think this is the motion I would make. The first part, it would be a yes with conditions. The first condition, and I take to be one of the most important ones, is that the city make good on a promise it made to this board in the IBZ process and in the Gowanus rezoning, which is to do a rezoning of the IBZ to strengthen the industrial uses in the IBZ. Paul Basile has been talking about this for a very long time. It's badly needed. There are all kinds of changes to really strengthen industrial uses in the IBZ. That would be the first part of this motion. The second would be for the council, the city planning commission or the council member to add MIH option 3 to this plan. Now, what that is an option that allows them to use only 40% AMI apartments, not 60% AMI. So even deeper affordability on this site. And we did that as part of our Gowanus rezoning application. I'd ask that we repeat that condition here. Then I would adopt the conditions that Joanna suggested as part of her support. First, that the that the city come up with a mechanism to prioritize existing residents in the placement of in new apartments that are created as a part of the lottery, the MIH system. Second, that the developer of any of this site in particular, the parking lot site and any site, protect pedestrian users and other road users during the construction process. And Joanna, if you allow, I would add that they participate in the Gowanus rezoning task force and any construction oversight committee so that we get our arms around construction at the site. And finally, I would add a condition that Joanna mentioned to advise the developer to reconsider the cellar level commercial use. And I think generally to consider hardening the flood risk areas of this project, given what we all know to be the unfortunate reality of flooding in this neighborhood. And so that would be the motion I would make to approve with those conditions.
Do I have a second on that motion? Second from Eric. So.
Peter, a point of information, Peter?
Yes, yes, Leroy.
Is there a timeline on affordability?
Leroy, so my understanding of the project is once the zoning is approved, then it will be up to individual developers to like have a proposal for when they would, come to the table to actually build any of this stuff. So it's hard to say. That's the reality. Hard to say.
No, I'm talking about in terms of once the building is built and there's affordable housing in there. Is there a timeline? In other words, if someone gets the $1,000 apartment and then leaves, does that apartment stay affordable?
Yeah, the apartments are permanently affordable under the program, which is like a very nice change in the rules that went into effect, I think somewhere around 2016, maybe. Right. So someone's income can go up and they don't have to suddenly leave just because they got a good job. And if they do leave, then the unit, the same number of units in the building remain income restricted.
Thank you.
I'm going to presume that most people's views on this have not changed. If anybody has anything new to add, I would ask you to raise your hand, but please try and take that as a hard and fast, because we've been at this for a while, that you only add something new. Karen.
I just had a question for Alec. The question is, can we add in something that would ask the developers to do a sewer study or either repair the sewer? Because that is the major issue when flooding occurs, because the sewers, to my knowledge, are not big enough. And if we're going to expand development, then we should expand the sewers or either.
Alec, will you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Karen, would you consider a slight tweak, which is what we did in the Gowanus rezoning is we said you need to invest all this money, and some of that money for sewer repair actually went into the points of agreement. We also said you need to continue to study as part of the Gowanus rezoning process the sewer needs. And so what I would suggest is that we reiterate that as a concern, ask the city to take into account these new units coming in online when it considers the sewer needs.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else have a new point to make about this? David.
I'm going to take a moonshot here. Friendly amendment that the developer agrees to provide 30% of the floor area for artists and light manufacturing spaces without reducing the required MIH for the entire building.
Woo-wee, good idea.
Can you just repeat it, David, so I understand?
The developer commits to providing 30% of the floor area for artists and light manufacturing uses without reducing the number of required MIH units in the building based on the original calculation, if it was all residential. We get our MIH, we get our manufacturing, we get our artist spaces.
Well, Alec, you'd need to accept that as a friendly amendment or else we have to vote on it.
Considering it, I mean, I think it's a very, I understand the point. I'm a little concerned about saying that we should be privileging like a artist space over other kind of industrial spaces that are permitted in the rezoning. I wouldn't want to say to a maker space or another industrial space of a different kind of more blue collar character, this space isn't for you because it's an artist space. That's sort of my own view, but if there's a general sense that people would appreciate, David, I might soften it to encourage the developer on these sites to prioritize artist spaces and light manufacturing.
Is that okay, David?
I would like it to be required. Is that the difference is that the distinction you're making?
Well, you said it's that's the distinction, and this you were emphasizing artist spaces rather than.
Well, the artist space we could talk about. It doesn't have to be. Well, there's two things here. I said the developer would commit. I would like to stay with that. In terms of if we want to just go with light manufacturing or something more general that's not commercial or retail and not residential.
David, personally, I think I like the flexibility here in the zoning that would say it could be a community facility under the mixed use. It could be a school. It could be a daycare center. A community facility is allowed. It could be commercial space like a ground floor grocery location. It could also be light manufacturing. And so, we're not micromanaging. If there's the highest and best uses is light manufacturing, then that could be done. If it's something else, then it would be something else. So that's my own take. So I guess what I'm saying is I oppose your friendly amendment.
Okay. I'll just say.
Okay, so we're going to have to take a vote on that amendment.
Money.
So can I ask everyone who is in favor of David's amendment to please raise your hand by hitting that button? I see two, David and Karen. Are there others? Kara, Suzanne, Hildegard,
My hand is up.
Paul, Daniel.
It's 6 at the moment, Peter.
Yeah. Any others? I am not seeing a sufficient number of votes, so that amendment fails. So we're going to move on to vote on the main motion. Let's simplify this. If you are against the motion in support of this, I ask you to raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to presume that you're voting in favor of it. David, Pauline, Paul, Daniel. Any others? Natasha? Hildegard? Okay, that's all I'm seeing. This motion passes. Alec, I ask you to get the text of that to us so we can include it appropriately. And I'm going to recognize David Briggs to present the landmarks motions, and I'm going to take another quick break.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Alec, for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Ty, you want to do 6th Avenue first?
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay, so we're going to look at 121, 123 6th Avenue, which was a certificate of appropriateness application for installation of visible railings at the roof and replacing the existing leaded glass windows on the front facade. Okay, so here is the elevation of the building. There are currently some leaded glass windows that you can see over on the right. You can't really see the leaded glass, but they're on the first floor. Historic photos. Go to the next slide, please.
One second, Dave, sorry.
That's all right. Well, while everybody looking at this, okay. Well, there's a railing up there on the top of the building too. I'm getting an echo, by the way. Somebody
I think I just fixed it.
Okay. Okay. So again, on the right there, are the leaded glass windows, and if you look at the top of the building, there's no railing. If you look on the left at the proposed elevation, you'll see new windows at the first floor. Actually, I'm sorry, they're at all 3 floors, but the primary issue here was replacing the leaded glass windows at the lower level. And you can also see at the top of the proposed front elevation a railing around a roof deck. So go to the next slide. This is fine. There's the location. There are some views. I think that went in the wrong direction. Okay, next slide. So you can see in the upper right photo there, there's some orange mesh behind that tree. That's where the railings are going to be. I'll explain what the railings are in a minute, why that's in front of us. Next slide, please. So on the left is the demolition of the windows, especially those leaded glass ones at the lower level, which were not considered historic. On the right are the proposed windows. The top 2 floors are basically the same configuration as existing. The bottom 2 floors are different, as you can see. Next slide. There's a rear elevation on the left. There's some larger windows going at the bottom, and then on the right, you can see the new railing at the roof. And the reason we're looking at the railing is they originally got the roof deck. Actually, maybe this will be on the next photo if there's a site plan. I'm sorry, next drawing. Yeah, perfect. So on the plan on the right, you see those red lines. That's where the railing had been initially proposed and it was approved at staff level. The owner decided they wanted to expand the roof deck and push it out to the back of the building, much closer to the front cornice. And since it became visible from a public way, that's why it came to us. Go to the next slide. There's a view from directly across the street. Next slide. I don't think there's anything you could see here. These are just the existing views. Go to the next slide. Same photos as before. The one lower right, you can see the mesh there that Ty's pointing to. Next slide. And there on the left where Ty's pointing, you can see where the proposed railing would be. And they were pointing out some other existing railings that were visible in the neighborhood. Next slide. The leaded glass windows, this is really just their argument that they were there for purposes of the funeral home. They were not historic. They were originally just straightforward clear glass double-hung windows. Next slide, please. The close-up shots of the leaded glass windows. Next slide. More shots, cracked and deteriorated. Next slide. And I should point out they were also non-insulating. Just more photos, a close-up drawing now of those leaded glass windows being replaced and what they'll look like on the bottom. They're aluminum clad. Next slide. Some of the details. Next slide. The window color will be black. More details. Next slide. At this point, I'm not sure what we were getting at. Just another mock-up photo there on the top left. Next slide.
That's the last slide.
Okay, so there was a motion to approve the project with the following conditions. The roof deck will not be enlarged beyond what was approved originally at staff level. That was seconded. There was a friendly amendment that the motion is acceptable as long as an elevator bulkhead is not required as per the 2014 Building Code, Chapter 11, accessibility requirements. And you can all guess who had made made that friendly amendment. The friendly amendment was accepted. 9 voted in favor and 3 abstained, and nobody voted against it.
Great. Hildegard, I see you have your hand raised. You don't have your hand.
Sorry.
Okay. Anybody have any comment on this? Okay, if not, we're going to presume that you are in favor of this unless you raise your hand or indicate in the chat that you are against it.
I'm abstaining, Peter.
Okay, Mark James is abstaining. Okay, let us go on, David, to your next motion.
Thank you. 483 Henry Street. Sorry, I gotta pull up my. So this is a certificate of appropriateness for installation of a new black steel rear deck with a glass canopy. Okay, this is on or behind, just off Strong Place. This is behind next to the church. Those who are familiar with the former church, I should say, between DeGraw and Kane. Such a site plan. Next slide. Okay, so we took a turn here. So now we're looking west is to the top of the page. Detached canopy is shown and it's being pointed to, and a deck as well. They were very clear about these were physically separated from the existing historic building. Next slide. Okay, now we're turning again. So north is to the top of the page. Just showing the locations again with all the views that we're going to see in the following pages. Next slide. This is the view from Henry Street. Nothing visible from here. Next slide. This is the back of the existing building as it currently exists. Next slide. A lower view of the back of the building, and then turning around and looking at actually the side wall of the former church, which I believe is now condos or something. I'm not sure. Next slide. Some more views of the backyard. It was an odd shaped yard. It's deeper than the neighboring yards, which someone asked some questions about. Next slide. More views at the side of the former church, back of the house. Now on the right, we're looking directly at the side of the former church. Next slide. So in these two photos, you can see the outline of the existing extension of 483 Henry Street and with the white dash line. Go to the next slide. More of the same, sort of hidden behind the trees. Next slide. Again, more of the same. Next slide. Okay, pointing out that there's some 8-foot tall walls and fences, and then a shorter planter and a 10-foot high masonry wall that are between the street and the backyard in question. Next slide. Pointing to these elements. Next slide. So the second note on the top, the one that says detached deck and canopy addition, is what we're concerning ourselves with. It's hidden behind this hedge when you stand right there. Go to the next slide. There it's much more visible as you walk up DeGraw towards Clinton, I guess. So that's an outline of it. Next slide. Okay, so these are showing site diagram lines. Next slide. So it's just a cross section between Henry and Strong Place with the visibility lines of the existing up top and the proposed below. Next slide. And then the visibility lines from DeGraw, looking across the adjacent backyards. Top is existing, bottom is proposed. Next slide. Another line. Next slide. All right, so the pink is what's being proposed. There were some questions about the setback from the property lines and the side yard setback. Next slide, please. So this part is just the canopy that's floating above the deck, which was in the original slide. So the canopy is a smaller footprint than the deck below it. Next slide. Again, the existing facade. Next slide. And that's the proposed canopy and deck below it and stairway. Next slide. And door, I should say, as well. Part of the fire escape has to be removed in order for this to happen. Next slide. And then this is the proposed drawing. It's amazing, this is over 30 drawings for a canopy and a deck. Next slide. The details, exposed steel and glass, very modern. Next slide. Is that it? No? Oh, these are precedents. Next slide. Again, another view.
That's it, David.
Okay. So there was a question about if there was an encroachment on the side yard, and they said it's not a side yard, it's an interior courtyard. That gets into sort of wonky code stuff. So there was a question also about whether the canopy could be retractable. Applicant stated the owner preferred a fixed canopy. There were no comments from the community on this. I should say there were no comments from the community on the other one either. There was a conditional approval, a motion for a conditional approval if the canopy roof was made less visible or lowered. That was seconded, and then there's a friendly amendment that the motion is acceptable as long as the proposal does not violate side yard setbacks required by the zoning resolution. And that friendly amendment was accepted. 9 in favor, 1 an abstention, and 2 were against. So the motion passed.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Anyone? Okay, we're gonna presume that you are voting in favor of this motion. Unless you either raise your hand or note so in the chat.
Again,
this is.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, David, could you just remind, I couldn't, frankly, can't recall whether I was one of those no votes or not. Do you have those meeting minutes?
I don't have the names, but I do think you voted against it. There was 2 people that did.
I think I did. So I vote against it again.
And I'm abstaining again.
Okay, so Daniel is against and Mark Shames is abstaining. Anyone else? If not, I understand we've been joined by Councilmember Lincoln Ressler, so we're going to invite him to briefly state his piece, and then we'll move on from there.
Well, Peter, it's always great to be with you and CB6, and I just want to thank all of the board members for their tremendous service to the community and their dedication and volunteerism to make our neighborhoods better. There are just a few things I was hoping to highlight briefly. One, I wanted to congratulate our couple. You know, we only have a slice of CB6 from District 33, but we have some great new appointees to the board that I'm really excited about, from our public housing developments and from Boren Hill, that I think are going to be great additions to the board. So I just want to congratulate them and all of the new board members of CB6. Look forward to serving with you to make our communities better. A couple other items I just wanted to highlight. One is we introduced an exciting package last week that Chris is noting in the chat around finally reining in rampant placard abuse across our communities. We got a couple of great bills that will revoke the tens of thousands of placards that are issued each year to city, state, and federal workers so that they can park their personal cars wherever they see fit. Doesn't make sense. We should be getting people out of their cars and into mass transit. I don't know why we incentivize public sector workers to do the opposite. So, you know, those cars get parked illegally all day long. They make it harder for cyclists, for people with strollers, for people in wheelchairs, and we're going to finally do something about it. And we are also going to empower citizens, New Yorkers, to enforce against it. And just like the idling law does, that's been such a big success, we're going to push to give New Yorkers who file complaints against folks who are parked illegally a chance to get a little bit of the income from the revenue that's generated from those violations. I wanted to highlight a new open street that's been proposed for our area, from Wyckoff all the way down to Union, stretching into the 39th and Shahana's district. There's a new open street that's been planned for Saturdays. I think it's a great idea, an opportunity for us to all enjoy the great businesses and establishments on Smith Street. We've been working actively with the Smith Street bid organizing effort to support them. We did a community cleanup this past weekend all along Smith from Pacific down to DeGraw, from Smith down over to Hoyt. We had about 24 volunteers out just picking up garbage, making our neighborhood better and cleaner. And that's the work that the Smith Street bid will eventually do if we can get that across the finish line. So we're really excited about that. And then just two final updates. One is a land use item that is inches away from CB6, but that I wanted to put on your all's radar. The full square block from Bergen to Wyckoff, from 3rd to Nevins is, they just certified a rezoning application this week. It's, I think, officially 280 Bergen is the application. So it is in Community Board 2, but the other side of Wyckoff Street, across the street is CB6. And so it's one that will be definitely of relevance and importance to your community. And so, there are a couple publicly owned sites on this block that I'm laser focused on trying to turn into 100% affordable housing. But we got to work with the developer and try and come up with a plan that will really meet the needs of our growing community in terms of affordable housing and infrastructure investments. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention something that I know is of tremendous import to Community Board 6 and that you all have been really leading the way on, which is that Councilmember Hanif, Shahana's office, and I have been working diligently to identify a facilitator who will, help be the convener for all of the key stakeholders, including many leaders in CB6, to make sure that the really tremendous points of agreement that were negotiated in the rezoning are fully realized. And so I want to thank mostly Shahana, but all of the community members who have been engaged and involved in this effort. And I'm confident that with a great facilitator in place, that we can hold the city accountable, hold the mayor and the agencies accountable to ensure that each and every one of those points of agreement is fully realized. And in District 33, where we had about a third of the rezoning area for the Gowanus rezoning was in our council district, we've been doing monthly meetings with leaders in Gowanus houses and NYCHA, and separate monthly meetings with leaders in Wyckoff Gardens and NYCHA to make sure that we move full steam ahead and hold NYCHA's feet to the fire so that $200 million that you all fought so admirably for is invested in our communities swiftly. Because I know that if we just let NYCHA do its thing, it'll be a decade plus before we see any progress. And I will sure as hell not let that happen. So I really just want to thank Chair Fleming, our great district manager, the one and only Mike Rassiopo, and all the members of CB6 and the community members that are here with us tonight for the chance to say hello and for your great work in the neighborhood. And if I can be of assistance in any way, if my team can be helpful in any way, please, please, please reach out. We really want to help. So thank you for having me. And I hope I didn't talk for too long, but appreciate the chance to say hello.
Thanks, Lincoln. Okay, we're going to talk to representative elected officials, and I'm going to call on them in the order that they appear on my screen. So I see first Dan Wiley from Congresswoman Nydia Velasquez's office.
Hi, Dan from Congresswoman Velasquez's office. I was in a half-hour slow down traffic on the BQE headed to Sunset Swing. I'm afraid I missed the boat, but I did enjoy some of the fishing on the pier down in Sunset Park. So WRDA, the Congressman got a few items in the Water Resources Development Act, which includes the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which isn't really in Community Board 6, but also some other ecological restoration things for the harbor. And I think I mentioned last time the community project funding requests that we've put in, we won't know until the end of the year. We have a number of them. And also just want to highlight that, you know, the pile driving that happened down at the public place site, which is called Parcel 3, which had all kinds of crazy vibrations on a manufactured gas plant site where no notice was given to any of the local elected officials or the community board about the weekend work that was going to be happening 2 consecutive weekends, pile driving 90 feet into, the toxic mayonnaise that's down underneath the site without any notice to the community is something that we've been working with Shahana Hanif's office and Assemblywoman Joanne Simon's office and Brisport, everyone basically, to try to have a clear procedure. I know this was covered at the CAG for Gowanus, and that Christos, who's project manager, has communicated with the lawyer for the property owner, as well as with DEC, demanding some procedures for notice and actually review before any construction or pile driving work happens on brownfield sites along the canal. So I just wanted to flag that for everybody, which I don't think I needed to, as I think the vibrations probably reached a lot of folks if you live close to Smith Street in Carroll Gardens, down near 5th. So that's what I got. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dan. I see Carol Ann Church from the Borough President's Office. Remember to unmute yourself, please.
I'm trying to, yes, here I am. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for recognizing me. This evening, I bring greetings from Borough President Antonio Reynoso. I want to congratulate the new board members who've been recently appointed. They all come with enthusiasm and desire to serve their communities. I ask them to please be fully participative and to please everyone who's been reappointed, newly appointed, please do attend one of the swearing in and orientation ceremonies scheduled for June 23rd and July 12th. We're trying to make it convenient for everyone, so we're offering both an in-person option here at Borough Hall as well as a virtual option. So please, if you haven't already done so, please remember to RSVP. We've been hard here at work at Borough Hall over the last 5 months. We're busy building up our staffing, still sort of doing that, but we're also really busy getting the agenda of the Borough President done. Chief among his promises is to decrease the incidence of maternal mortality among Black and Brown women here in Brooklyn. And to do that, he is improving birthing facilities at 3 hospitals in Brooklyn, and working to provide new mothers with support. Along with Deputy Borough President Richardson, he is working on proactively combating gun violence through the creation of safety councils. CB6 should have already been, all CBs should have been contacted to appoint a member to the council. The councils are made up of the precinct council, clergy, and other community organizations. For all CBs that have a Friends of group, please contact Borough Hall. We're giving out grants to community boards. If you don't have a Friends of group, but you have a friendly fiscal conduit, please contact us. We're giving out grants for summer programming. Then I want to say that all organizations as well, community organizations, can reach out to us. We'll be having a link up on our website. If it didn't go up today, it will be up in the next couple of days, where discretionary funding grants can be applied for. I'm really happy to say that Borough Hall is open. It is open for Brooklynites to celebrate. Just this evening, we celebrated the launch of the Puerto Rican Parade committee right here with wonderful cultural music and food. But just early in the week, we celebrated the launch of Pride Month. And last month we had Haitian flag raising amongst other events. So if you belong to any ethnic group, cultural group, and you want to have an event here at Borough Hall, please visit our website. Click on the link. We're open and we're welcoming all Brooklynites to be here. Please stay informed on our happenings by following us across social media platforms and visiting our website for details. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you. I see Faiza from Councilmember Hanif's office.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Hi, everyone. This is Faiza from Councilmember Shahana Hanif's office. You'll probably see me around the district. So just a few updates that we're having. Our Councilmember Hanif will be holding a hearing for her bill on universal residential composting for New York City. Woohoo, composting. Yeah, it'll be on June 15th, Wednesday. So, it'll be with the Committee of Sanitation. And the next update that I have for you is our office is holding a training on Monday, June 13th at 7 p.m. to talk about how to testify and strategize on messaging. If you want to show your support before the hearing, I will put out a social media toolkit for you on the chat to build, some momentum. Another thing is that in-person constituent service appointments have opened for our office. So you'll be meeting with me directly with any concerns or questions that you have with city services, community affairs. We've already been getting appointments. I'm happy to put the appointment link on the chat, but it is already on our council website. A lot of people understand the appointment situation because the Councilmember Hanif has been very busy and in and out of the office. So that's why, you're meeting with me as the constituent services director, just so we clear that out. Which is why I also want to mention that in Kensington, I have also, our office has also opened up the CUNY Citizenship Now legal clinic for folks who have questions about citizenship related issues, immigrant related issues. We have a free immigration attorney from CUNY Citizenship Now who sits in that office every Wednesday with me. This probably, because I know you all don't represent Kensington, but if you have any folks that are in need of immigration related services, we're here for you on that count. Also, Councilmember Hanif and our office are attending more events now. So please invite us to any events that you're hosting. We had an amazing time at the Family Fun Ride with Transportation Alternatives at Prospect Park, which I guess, again, not in the district, but still very fun. This Saturday, we'll be tabling at the Fifth Avenue Pride Parade, as well as Councilmember Hanif will be speaking as well. So feel free to stop by. I will be in front of the Old Stone House to hear your concerns and discuss any community related issues with you. And then we will all definitely see you all, or some of you, or most of you, I don't know, at the Park Slope Civic Council Town Hall happening at the Old Stone House this Sunday. So it'll definitely be a busy weekend for me. So please, say hello if you see our staff. Most of our office will be there. And I think that is it for updates. My colleague Mia, who's our land use director, usually handles issues related to Gowanus. So as Councilmember Wessler has mentioned, we are doing a very diligent search for a Gowanus task force facilitator. So I'm happy to pass along any updates my colleague Mia would have for on that count. But feel free to reach out if you need anything. I know that I'm probably in like 500 different pending cases from around this community board constituents. So I'm happy to assist in any way that I can. Our office is always open to constituents, and please feel free to call or email if you need anything. I also want to mention that, over the past 6 months, we've had several water main breaks, water pipe breaks, discolored water happening around Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, Columbia Waterfront. I just want to address that and say, we're our office has been the only form of communication to constituents. And as a result, Kember Hanif is planning on discussing these issues with the commissioner of the DEP. We're just, we're waiting on after the budget season is over to address these issues. And I really appreciate that constituents on this call have reached out to our office about these issues. And I'm happy to, I'm always monitoring my emails. So that's why I'm always there to catch this first. So I've always been keeping our elected partners in these districts updated as well. So please reach out if you need anything. We're here for you. And we're here to listen if you just want to call and vent. That's it on my end. Thank you all and have a good and restful evening.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else I missed?
Peter, Christina from Councilmember Avilas's office.
Yes, please go ahead.
Just a few quick updates from our office. The first one that CB6 might be particularly interested in is we have finally set a date for our community forum on the last mile facilities. That date is set for June 23rd. So we have DOT, DCP, and EDC all agreed on that date. It will be specific to Red Hook. We are still determining a place and time. It will be in the evening. As soon as we know that information, we'll share it with you all. We've reached out to some community members and advocates to help us craft the agenda. Of course, if you have thoughts about that, please email me or give a call to the office. Second, as Carol already mentioned, the Sunset Park Puerto Rican Day Parade is coming up this Sunday, June 12th. The kickoff will be at 59th Street and 5th Avenue starting at 5. It will travel northbound along 5th Avenue up 44th Street, and there'll be a stage inside the park where music will be playing, and we invite everyone to come and participate and celebrate with the community. Next, as you all know, the state passed the NYCHA trust legislation. We sent a letter to the heads of the committees, Senator Kavanaugh, Assemblymember Simberlitz, and Governor Hochul, with concerns we have heard from residents and NYCHA employees. We understand, of course, that there's folks on both sides of the issues. Another letter went out earlier that day from one of our colleagues, which was in support of the trust. And we simply wanted to get on the record the concerns of those whose voices may not have been heard in this very fast moving piece of legislation. So we did elevate those voices who are rightfully concerned about some of these unprecedented changes. We wanted to alert community members to the Warren Street Summer Camp. Registration is open for this free summer day camp. It's open to children and grades K through 5 for 6 weeks, is free of cost, and has robust summer programming. And finally, a quick update on New York City Red Hook Coastal Resiliency Project. We'll host a virtual meeting to update the community on the updates to the project's draft design. As many of you know, Red Hook is still recovering from the effects of Superstorm Sandy, and we need a robust community engagement to move these projects forward and protect ourselves from the effects of climate change, which we know are getting worse. That will occur on Thursday, June 16th. If you're interested, please reach out to our office and we'll give you some more details. And that's it from our office. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, one more.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead.
Sorry, I know it's late. I'll try to be quick. I'm from Senator Kavanaugh's office. This is Stacy Johnson, Brooklyn liaison. We basically have the Cobble Hill area of your community district. The senator is back in New York full time after the session has ended. There was a comprehensive package of bills to close loopholes in the gun laws and also another package of bills to protect abortion rights. I think most of you know all about that. 2 of the 10 bills related to gun control were sponsored by Senator Kavanaugh. One of them is to prohibit the purchase of body armor, and the other one was to require that recovered guns are reported to a clearinghouse so that there's data sharing. Another important piece of legislation in that package is that it will expand who can file an extreme risk protection order. So that's related to the red flag law. So not only can health professionals now file the extreme risk protection order, but police will also be required to do so. I'll summarize a little bit. There's also an important bill, the hotel conversion bill, to make it easier to convert hotels to residential housing. The package of bills to protect abortion rights, protect both individuals seeking abortion and also providers of those services, and so that people can come to New York State to get those services safely. There were also some disappointments. The senator was pretty disappointed in the different legislation related to climate change that did not pass. His All Electric Buildings Act did not pass the Assembly, and the Build Public Renewables Act also didn't pass the Assembly. Senator Kavanaugh was disappointed that good cause eviction wasn't brought to a vote, but he did sponsor a bill that did pass. That's a commission on housing affordability. So he will continue to work towards ways to keep people in their homes. And like I said, he's just really excited to be back in New York City full time and to join a lot of the in-person events that will be happening over the summer. So don't forget to invite us to those events. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone who wished to speak at community session who is still in the room? If so, you need to say so in the chat so that we can upgrade you.
Peter, I see William Thomas has his hand raised. I'm going to promote him to the panel. William,
you have 3 minutes.
You have 3 minutes. Once you're on the panel, please unmute yourself.
Hello there. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Beautiful. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Thomas. I serve as the executive director of Open New York. We're an independent grassroots pro-housing nonprofit. I just wanted to thank you guys for voting to support the project tonight. My feeling is that Community Board 6 proved itself one of the most progressive community boards in the city by voting for the Gowanus rezoning with conditions. And I think voting for this project and its mixed income housing just continues that trend. So thank you to for the community board for supporting affordable housing, mixed income housing, fair housing. I think it's really important. And I know it's been a long night, but thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Remember, please, that we do not meet in July and August. Some committees will continue to meet as issues come before them. And also, if there are votes to be taken, the executive committee will take those votes. So if you're a committee chair, you may hear from us about a Zoom meeting, and I ask as many of you as possible to attend that. We'll try and do one sort of in the middle of the summer to clean anything up if it's necessary. If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Eric. Be well, everyone. Have a wonderful summer. We will see you in September, either in person or online. Thank you.